It was a day in sports yesterday that had everybody buzzing. Our text lines today, like a 90-10 approval rating. Albert Pujols, in his final year, will be at Busch Stadium. Joining us now is the man who made it happen, Cardinal President John Mozeliak. John, good to be with you. How are you, sir?
I'm well, Frank. How are you?
Very good. So to appreciate yesterday, I think we have to go back to, I believe it was December 8th, 2011. And you remember this day probably like it was yesterday. I remember you telling me as soon as you got the news, you just checked out of your hotel. Take us back to that day when Albert signed with the Angels.
Wow. I mean, I do remember it. I don't think about it as yesterday, though. It was a long time ago. And obviously it was something that really changed the course of the Cardinals, my career, and all of that. But yeah, that morning when I learned that he was signing with Anaheim, I realized that this was their announcement. It wasn't for something that like I should be sticking around for or my group in terms of answering questions and all of that. So yeah, we left. We actually hung out in the airport for about 3.5 hours before our flight was taking off, and then eventually we landed in St. Louis. And then, of course, as you may remember, I did address the media late that afternoon. But you know, it's when you have an iconic player like Albert, it's when you lose somebody like that, it's a real hit to the organization. As you may have seen yesterday in that press conference, and I was lamenting on his career, his 11 years with the Cardinals, and to think about having, 3 years where he wins the MVP, 4 years he finishes second, 1 year he finishes third. So that's 8 of his 11 years with the Cardinals. He was top 3 in MVP voting. And then twice he finished 5th, so that's 10 out of 11 years. And then, one time he had a 9th place finish. So, I mean, really remarkable in what he did. And as I mentioned yesterday, now you fast forward to 2022, and here we are. And, obviously there's a lot of nostalgia, a lot of warm feelings with what we have going on here in the sense of Albert returning, Yachty in his last year, and which could also be Waino's last year. And so the three of them and what they've meant to this franchise, what they've done to this franchise over the last 20 years is really special. And so I think for all of us as fans, it's going to be fun to at least be able to put our hat on this summer and watch it.
And if I remember correctly, it was almost less than 2 weeks later that you pivot off Albert right away and go right to Carlos Beltran, which helped get you back to the World Series. I mean, you didn't waste any time.
No, obviously we were coming off a World Series, right? And we felt like we had a lot of good things on this club. And, obviously there was a lot going on that offseason with Tony La Russa retiring or stepping down. And then, of course, having to hire Mike Matheny as manager. So it was really sort of one of those like very, very active few months. But yeah, I mean, we were lucky. Ended up with Carlos. He had a lot of productive years for us before moving on. And so, we were at least able to keep the ball rolling down the hill, which was helpful.
We're going to get more to the present in just a second, but I think it helps set it up a little bit better if we go back. I'm wondering, John, in terms of like emotional, I mean, you weren't a rookie GM at the time, but I think you took the job in 2007. You were still relatively young in your general manager career. How traumatic or dramatic was that for you? I mean, were you losing sleep? Were you conscious? Oh my goodness, I'm the GM on board, losing Albert. I mean, how difficult was that for you at one time?
I would say this, like I'm fortunate because Bill DeWitt and I, we have a very good relationship. And even prior to being named general manager, he and I still had a working relationship prior to that. So as we were going into this, I never looked at it like through a set of lenses that was personalized. Yeah, there were some stressful nights. There's no doubt about it. But in terms of, I didn't think about it as like, okay, I'm the guy that's like messing this up or not getting it done. As you can imagine, anytime you have negotiations of that level, it's really more than just one person. And, ultimately the player has just as much say in what's going to be the outcome as a team or the principal negotiator. So, yeah, those were tough times. There's no doubt about it. But, it was one of those things where we as an organization felt good about where we were. We felt that we had positioned ourselves for future success. Yes, we were losing a iconic and legendary player at that time, but baseball's a funny business. There's things that you think will always happen, and sometimes they don't. So there's nothing is ever for sure in life. And so in baseball, you adjust, you adapt, you try to remain flexible and nimble so you can remain successul.
So all the stars aligned. It was like the perfect storm. They expand the rosters, we think, to 28, the universal DH. Your young DH candidates have not been hitting. And Albert said yesterday that he took the call from you on Sunday. I'm wondering when the thought got into John Mozeliak's head, hey, we ought to really look long and hard at signing Albert Pujols.
Well, I wouldn't be truthful if I would say I hadn't thought about it, since the season ended last year. In terms of acting on it are two different things. But it was always in the back of my mind because, I think about what he meant to the organization, what he meant to all of us, and relationship with Yachty and Adam and all of that. It's interesting. Right, he walks in that clubhouse yesterday, and you could see there's an aura around him. You could just tell players who have never met him before or never been in the same room with him, you could see it was, affecting them. And, that's pretty special. So when you ask, when I thought about it, obviously we definitely had a plan once we got past the labor situation. We knew we were trying to find that left-hand hitter because we are a very right-handed club. But then, as you point out, there's some other things that happened since then, and with the ability to have a DH, with the roster expansion, with the fact that nobody was just pounding the ball so much that it was going to make it a really difficult decision. And then Albert was still out there, and so I think back really about a week, I started to think about it a lot more, and ultimately I felt on Sunday he and I needed to speak, and we did, and here we are.
And did you talk to Ali Marmol and say, I want you to get comfortable with him, I want you to have conversations with him, or how did that all unfold?
Well, Ali and Albert have a relationship off the field. They know each other, so from that standpoint, having Ali come in as our managers made a lot of these things quite seamless. So, obviously someone like Ali would have a lot of history in our system, and I think they work together in the off season at times. So, in terms of really the question that Ali and all of us had is we got to make sure we're very clear in how we communicate playing time and usage, because that's the one thing that can always derail these types of things. And so, we're going to be, and we have been, very transparent and candid.
John Mozeliak with us, Hollywood Casino Press Box on the all-new 590 The Fan. We have been a part of so many unbelievable opening days in St. Louis, but I got to believe, at least since you took over and since I've been covering the Cardinals, this is going to be the most powerful. I mean, the three of them on the field at the same time. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I was, over the last, obviously, 20 hours or so, I've been thinking a lot about sort of Cardinal history. And we're fortunate, right? Because the last really 2 decades of Wainwright and Mr. Molina is special in its own right. And then to have somebody like Albert Pujols rejoin us, given the impact he had for those first 10 years of this decade, it's incredibly memorable and special. And maybe the way to think about it is think about somebody who's 10 years old or 12 years old or 14 years old, and their parents talk about Cardinal baseball with them, and they talk about seeing this great player, one of the greatest players they ever saw, named Albert Pujols. And to them, it was just a name. It wasn't like you're following Anaheim. It wasn't like you were keeping track with his career. But now, 2022, you get to see what people talked about. And I just think from a generational perspective, it's a really sort of neat tie-in.
All right, before we let you go, a couple of quick thoughts. The one inning yesterday by Jordan Hicks where he touched 99, that was really encouraging yesterday. What'd you think?
Yeah, it's exciting to see. Glad he's on the mound, glad he's feeling healthy. And, I think he's someone that's going to contribute in terms of how we use him and what that looks like. I think that's still TBD. the good news is, April, we do have some off days. The good news is that we do get the ability to carry some extra pitching so you can protect. And, looking forward to seeing how we can manage that is something that I think's a lot to be excited about. So, yeah, I was really pleased with what we saw yesterday.
The fifth starting spot right now, is it a two-man race between Jake Woodford and Drew Verhagen?
It feels like that. I think that's the way it's shaping up. But I do feel like anytime we answer these questions right now, even though we only have a week left down here, it's still, in some ways, a lot of time. And so we're just going to try to navigate that, and, we'll see how this shakes out. But I think both have performed well, and I'm not surprised about either.
Any update on Jack Flaherty?
No, Jack's just in the process of beginning that rehab, and most importantly, you have to let that inflammation calm down. But, I saw him the other day, and he seemed like he was in really good spirits, and that's encouraging.
All right, before we let you go, give us the one name in the organization that maybe we don't know that much about that has kind of caught your eye that, hey, this guy may be in our plans in a couple of years. Maybe it's somebody that's going to be in AA, single A, triple A. Give us one name to think about for our baseball fans.
Well, I could do that, but I'm going to do something a little different.
All right.
I'm going to give you two names that are going to be more impactful probably this year that you're not thinking about. And that would be Jake Walsh, and that would also be Andre Palante. And both guys have had really nice camps. Both guys are got electric stuff, and I think both guys are going to have their fingerprints on the St. Louis Cardinals in 2022.
Great stuff. John, congratulations on an unbelievable day yesterday. We'll see you on opening day in a couple of weeks. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Frank.
All right, John Mozeliak, president of the Cardinals, instant offense and information on the Birds.